Welcome to the Occult Rejects first video documentary. In this documentary, we will be covering Old St. Patrick's Cathedral and Catacombs. Located in Little Italy, New York City, it is Manhattan's only Catholic catacombs and cemetery. For over 200 years, the grounds of Old St. Patrick's Basilica has been used as a final resting place for the faithfully departed. Within the Basilica Cemetery and underground catacombs, bishops rest alongside many prominent New York Catholics and clergy. There are now 33 family vaults, each with 8 to 12 people in them, 5 priests, and 2 bishops in the catacombs. The cornerstone of the New York City's first cathedral was set in place on June 8, 1809, and for the most of the 19th century it served as a center of religious and social activity for the rapidly growing Catholic Church in America.
As you walk past the gates that lead to the church entrance, you are welcomed by a statue of John Hughes. John Hughes was named Bishop of the Basilica in 1838 and first Archbishop of New York. Hughes was a pioneer during the waves of Catholic immigration in the 1840s, establishing Roman Catholic social outreach organizations, helping to establish the tradition of charitable organizations in the United States. He even founded St. John's College, which would later become known as Fordham University. A native of Ireland, Hughes was born and raised in Augur in the South County, Tyrone. He emigrated to the United States in 1817, became a priest in 1826, and a bishop in 1838. He was regarded as the best known, if not exactly the best loved Catholic bishop in the country. He became known as Dagger John, both for his following the Catholic practice wherein a bishop precedes his signature with a cross, as well as for his aggressive personality.
As you can see behind the statue of John on the cemetery fence, you have a few plaques. The first one is for Laurentius de Pont. Laurentius de Pont had an enormous funeral ceremony held in New York's Old St. Patrick's Cathedral on Mulberry Street. He was not buried there, though. He was an Italian, later American, opera librettist, poet, and Roman Catholic priest. He wrote The Liberty for 28 operas by 11 composers, including 3 of Mozart's most celebrated operas, The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, and Così fan tutte. He was the first professor of Italian literature at Columbia University, and along with Manuel Garcia, the first to introduce Italian opera to America. Da Ponte was also a close friend of Mozart and Casanova.
Then we have a plaque here for the Knights of Columbus. As written on the plaque is, the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral gratefully acknowledges the Knights of Columbus Supreme Council for their support of the Archbishop John J. Hughes Memorial and the 200th anniversary of the Old Cathedral.
And for the last plaque, we have the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Written on the plaque is, the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral gratefully acknowledges the friendly Sons of St. Patrick of Morris County, New Jersey, and the Ancient Order of Hibernians of New York County for the creation of the Archbishop John J. Hughes Memorial on the 200th anniversary of the Old Cathedral. A little bit about the order. The Ancient Order of Hibernians has a strong historical connection to St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. The order is an Irish Catholic fraternal organization. Members must be male, Catholic, and either born in Ireland or of Irish descent. Its largest membership is in the United States, where it was founded in New York City in 1836. The name was adopted by groups of Irish immigrants in the United States. Its purpose was to act as guards to shield Catholic churches from anti-Catholic forces in the mid-19th century and to assist Irish Catholic immigrants. Anti-Catholic rioting in 1844 posed a serious physical threat to the church, which Bishop John Hughes met with the assistance of armed Irish organizations like the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Their headquarters were adjacent to the church campus at 42 Prince Street. In the 1850s, the order helped in defending the church against desecration by the anti-Catholic nativists by forming a blockade around the cemetery walls of the church. The Manhattan County Board of the AOH still hold their monthly meetings in the parish house of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. Now, if you turn to the right, there is another plaque on the church wall that is dedicated to the Ancient Order of Hibernians. And on the plaque it says, erected to the memory of the members of the Ancient Order of Hibernians of the city of New York, who, like their Irish fathers of old, were ready to sacrifice their lives for religious freedom and the right to worship God as their conscience dictated, and who, in April 1844, at the call of the Most Reverend John Hughes, first Archbishop of New York, rallied to the defense of this cathedral when it was threatened with destruction by the forces of bigotry and intolerance. Our fathers, chained in prisons dark, were still in the heart and conscience free. How sweet would be their children's fate if they, like them, could die for thee. Faith of our fathers, holy faith, we will be true to thee till death. This tablet is erected by the members of the Ancient Order of Hibernians of the County of New York in connection with the centennial celebration of the order as a tribute to the devotion of its members to Holy Mother Church and to those principles of religious freedom which form the cornerstone of American liberty. And now we will head over to the cemetery. The graveyard underwent its final expansion to its present size in August 1824. Prayers were offered in the Irish Gaelic language by Reverend Michael O'Gorman at a public Vespers ceremony in the graveyard. Vespers just means an evening Christian ceremony. To give you an idea of how rural Manhattan was at the time, there was a fox that was caught in the churchyard not long after completion.
And here we will cover some of the notable people buried in the church cemetery. Patrick Nealis, he was a veteran of the American Revolutionary War. John Michael O'Connor, He entered the U.S. Army in 1812 as a first lieutenant of artillery, rising to assistant adjutant general in the Northern Army with the rank of major in 1814. He was honorably discharged in June 1815 and reinstated 6 months later as a captain of infantry. He left the Army for good in June 1821. He corresponded with James Madison a lot. They seemed to be friends.
Andrew Morris. He served as an assistant alderman of New York's First Ward and also served in the New York State Assembly. He was founding trustee of St. Peter's Church in St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. Morris emigrated from Ireland to New York from one of the 14 merchant families known as the Tribes of Galway. He served on the building committee of the cathedral and was a major contributor of funds for the building of both St. Peter's and St. Patrick's. He also purchased the property on which the new St. Patrick's Cathedral was built. Francis Cooper. His election forced the changing of state law in 1803, forbidding Catholics from holding public office in New York State.
Gregory Dillon. He was a founding president of the Emigrant Industrial Savings Bank, captain in the U.S. Army in the War of 1812, an Irish immigrant and co-founder of the Irish Emigrant Society. Charlotte Melmoth. She was a well-known Shakespearean stage actor of the 18th and early 19th century, largely known for her performance as Lady Macbeth. She was a personal friend of Benjamin Franklin. In her later years, after giving up stage acting in 1812, she taught English elocution, and she also ran a boarding house and school in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Her pupils included children from some of the wealthiest and best-known Brooklyn families, including the Cornells, Pierpoints, Cuttings, Jacksons, and Lucure families. John McCluskey, later Cardinal Archbishop of New York, was also one of her pupils.
Captain Pierre de Landais. He was captain of the U.S. Navy in the Revolutionary War, originally a rear admiral in the French Navy. He fought along with John Paul Jones in the capture of the British ship Serapis, but was accused of insubordination and near treasonous sabotage of Jones's effort. For this reason, he was never awarded a pension by the U.S. Congress, and he was forced to resign from the French and American Navy as a result. He protested until his death that he was innocent of the charges against him. Stephen Jumel. He was a French merchant and planter who immigrated to America from Saint Dominic, later renamed Haiti, during the slave revolt in the 1790s. He purchased the Morris Jumel Mansion, which still stands today in Upper Manhattan. He was the first husband of Eliza Jumel, a socialite who later married Aaron Burr, former U.S. Vice President.
Captain Joseph Lametti. He was an Italian immigrant from the city of Modena. He was captain in the U.S. Army 9th Artillery in the War of 1812 and had a memorial plaque placed at his grave in 1930 by the General Society of the War of 1812 in a large ceremony, but it has since been missing from the gravesite for many years. Valentine Derry, exiled from Ireland for his participation in the United Irishmen's Rebellion in 1798, is also buried in the cemetery. He became a teacher of the classics at Erasmus Hall School in Flatbush, Brooklyn in 1808. He later opened his own academy in Newtown, Queens County.
Charles de Vecchio. He was an officer in the First Roman Catholic Benevolent Society of New York in 1816. He was also a generous supporter of the Roman Catholic Orphan Asylum in 1817. He was also a trustee of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral.
John G. Gottsberger and family. John was a merchant, wholesaler in wines and liquors, and distiller of cordials. He was a member of the Friends of Freedom of Education Carroll Hall group that met and ran candidates in November 1841 for the New York State Senate. He ran for state senate on Bishop Hughes's Carroll Hall ticket during the public school controversy in 1841. In 2 different atlases, it shows Gottsberger owning the property the Lincoln Arcade was built on. He is buried in a large underground family vault in the Churchyard Cemetery.
Daniel Keyline. He was one of the original 22 Catholics who petitioned the French consulate to open the first Catholic church in New York City. And now we will make our way to inside the church. And now getting into the history of Old St. Patrick's Church. It was the first cathedral church for the Diocese of New York, created in 1808 by Pope Pius VII. It is also the second Catholic church in Manhattan and third Catholic church in all of New York State. It was designed by the same architect who designed New York City Hall, Joseph Francis Mangin. It was the largest Catholic church in the United States once it was completed in 1815. It was the site of the first classical school for boys in New York, named the New York Literary Institution. The institution was founded by Jesuit Anthony Coleman in 1808. Father Anthony Coleman brought with him to New York 5 additional Jesuits, a priest and 4 seminarians, who opened the academy. Coleman had hoped the school would develop into a full-fledged Jesuit college.
Reverend Bulger, who in 1820 became the first priest ordained in New York City, and Reverend O'Gorman died in November 1824 within a week of each other due to illnesses contracted while performing their parochial duties to the ill of the parish. John Connolly, the first resident bishop of the diocese, died the following January after contracting an illness while ministering to Bulger and O'Gorman, his former roommates and assistants. New York City's oldest existing Catholic grammar school, circa 1826, was St. Patrick's Old Cathedral School. It was a Roman Catholic pre-K through 8th grade school. It was one of the oldest schools in the Archdiocese of New York and in the city. It was founded by the Sisters of Charity and had a peak enrollment of approximately 500 students, Catholic and non-Catholic alike. The Board of Trustees in 1834 said, "A wall shall be built around the cathedral and churchyard to protect both the graveyard and the church from the rioters bent on destruction due to anti-Catholic sentiment in Manhattan at the time."
St. John Newman was the first United States bishop to be canonized. He was ordained at the Old Cathedral by Bishop Dubois in 1836. A school building constructed on campus in 1837 was the first building designed and built as a Catholic school in the city. Previously, schools had used church basements or repurposed buildings. Pope Pius IX created the Archdiocese of New York in 1850, appointing John Hughes as Archbishop. The Archdiocese of New York became the spiritual hub for maintaining allegiance to the Holy See. A fire destroyed the interior of the Old Cathedral on October 6, 1866. The Old Cathedral was rebuilt and reopened on St. Patrick's Day in 1868. In 1875, John McCloskey was installed as the first American cardinal. He received the cardinal's hat in the rectory at 263 Mulberry Street, and then again in a second ceremony in the Old Cathedral across the street.
On May 25, 1879, St. Patrick's Old Cathedral was supplanted as the seat of the Archdiocese of New York by the new Cathedral of St. Patrick. General Thomas Eckert, personal friend and confidant of President Lincoln, was buried in an elaborate vault in the crypt beneath the Old Cathedral in 1910. In 1936, St. Michael's Russian Catholic Church was established in the Old Chancery Building. This is the first chapel to serve the Russian Catholic expatriate community in New York, which fled their homeland during the Russian Revolution. In 1966, the Old Cathedral and associated buildings were among the first sites to be designated as New York City landmarks. The school closed in June 2010 due to low enrollment and is slated to be turned into luxury townhouses, condominiums, and office spaces. The Old Cathedral campus complex was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977, and the Old Cathedral was designated a basilica by His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI on March 17, 2010.
As we enter the catacombs, here are some of the notable families and people entombed underneath the basilica. The Venerable Pierre Toussaint, a former slave from the French colony of Saint Dominic, he became a well-known philanthropist to the poor of the city. Due to his devout and exemplary life, the Catholic Church has been investigating his life for possible canonization, and in 1996 he was declared venerable by Pope John Paul II. Toussaint's remains were moved from the North Cemetery of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral to the crypt below the main altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral on 5th Avenue in the late 20th century. Credited as the de facto founder of Catholic Charities, New York, Toussaint is the first and only layman to be buried in the crypt below the main altar of the current St. Patrick's Cathedral on 5th Avenue. He owned a house on Franklin Street, where the Toussaints sheltered orphans and fostered numerous boys in succession. Toussaint supported them in getting an education and learning a trade. He sometimes helped them get their first jobs through his connections in the city. Toussaint also helped raise money to build Old St. Patrick's Cathedral. He was also a benefactor of the first New York City Catholic school for black children at St. Vincent de Paul on Canal Street.
Francis Delmonico and the Delmonico family. Founders of the hospitality industry in New York City and proprietor of one of New York's first fine dining establishments, Delmonico's. The restaurant is known for offering an innovative menu that blended traditional European cuisine with American flavors, which quickly gained popularity among the city's elite. Delmonico's soon became the go-to destination for politicians, businessmen, and socialites, earning a reputation for its service, atmosphere, and dishes. Delmonico's cater to the likes of Mark Twain, as well as many other prominent New Yorkers that are buried in the Catacombs. Delmonico's also played a significant role in shaping American cuisine. They introduced dishes that are now considered staples of American fine dining. The restaurant was famous for its signature dishes, such as Delmonico steak, lobster à l'américaine, and baked Alaska. The Delmonico brothers were also pioneers in creating new culinary techniques, like the use of filet powder, a spice made from ground sassafras leaves, which added depth and complexity to their dishes. One of the most significant contributions Delmonico made to American cuisine was the creation of the first formal dinner menu. Prior to the restaurant's opening, diners typically had to order from a limited selection of daily specials or a la carte options. Delmonico's introduced a comprehensive menu that offered a range of options, allowing people to choose from a variety of courses and dishes.
Charles O'Connor. He was a legal counsel for the Archdiocese of New York. He was the first Catholic presidential nominee. Known as a conservative Democrat in politics and was a longtime friend of Samuel Tilden. He served as a delegate to the 1852 Democratic National Convention and was the first United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York from 1853 to 1854. In 1871, O'Connor was among the New Yorkers who played a role in the overthrow of the corrupt political boss William M. Tweed. He was nominated for president by the straight-out Democratic Party, with John Quincy Adams II as his running mate. O'Connor did not accept the nomination but remained on the ballot and received a scattering of votes. Ulysses S. Grant won the election. He is buried in the catacombs, but a large O'Connor cenotaph is present in the churchyard cemetery.
Thomas O'Connor. He was the second son of Charles O'Connor of Mount Allen and the grandson of the famed historian and antiquarian Charles O'Connor. The elder Charles wrote dissertations on the ancient history of Ireland, as well as several other important historical works. This branch of the O'Connor family is one of Europe's most ancient, which has an unbroken line to 75 AD, which includes Rory O'Connor, the last High King of Ireland. Thomas was a member of the United Irishmen. He took the oath from Wolfe Tone. O'Connor was actively involved in the Irish Rebellion of 1798. The failure of this revolutionary attempt of that year caused him to leave his native land. He traveled to New York City in 1801, where he eventually met Hugh O'Connor and his family. He devoted himself largely to literary pursuits, contributing to the journals, writing and publishing books, and editing various periodicals, including the Military Monitor, which was established in 1812, the Shamrock and the Globe, founded in 1819.
John McKeon, U.S. Attorney and General for the Southern District of New York, also a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. James McKeon. He was a captain of the U.S. Artillery, and he was in the War of 1812, he's also John McKeon's father. Thomas T. Eckert. He was an officer in the U.S. Army, chief of the War Department Telegraph Staff from 1862 to 1866. He was United States Assistant Secretary of War from 1866 to 1867 and an executive at Western Union. He was a close personal friend and confidant of President Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln drafted the Emancipation Proclamation in the General's office. Thomas became president of Western Union Company after the war. In 1875, he became president of the Atlantic and Pacific Telegraph Company. And then, in 1880, Eckert became president of the American Union Telegraph, Western Union's main competitor. When Western Union and American Union Telegraph merged in 1881, Eckert was named vice president and general manager of the expanded Western Union. He retired from this position in 1900 to become chairman of the board of directors, a position which he held until shortly before his death on October 20th, 1910.
John R. Brady, attorney, Justice of New York Supreme Court, and administered oath of office to President Chester A. Arthur, son of Thomas Brady. Thomas Brady, attorney and educator. He tutored future Cardinal John McCluskey in Latin and father of James T. and John R. Brady. James T. Brady, known criminal defense attorney, candidate for governor of New York, son of Thomas Brady and brother of Judge John R. Brady. Andrew Kerrigan, a founding officer of the Emigrant Industrial Savings Bank and Commissioner of Emigration of New York State. He was also president of the Irish Emigrant Society. Countess Anna Leary. She was a philanthropist and financier, particularly for the Italian children who were arriving in New York City in the late 19th century. She financed the building of the chapel at Bellevue Hospital. The title of Countess was granted to her by Pope Leo as a reward for her charitable works. She is buried in the catacombs with her parents and siblings, one of whom was the noted banker Arthur Leary.
Dominic Lynch and the Lynch family. Dominic Lynch Sr. was a wealthy merchant and an Irish immigrant. He was a founding trustee of St. Peter's and Old St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. He attended the inauguration of George Washington in New York and was also a signatory to the address of congratulations to President Washington by the Roman Catholic Community of America. He, along with Lorenzo da Ponte, brought Italian opera to New York City. Lynch also owned the town of Lynchville in New York State, which was later renamed Rome. The Lynch family is one of the tribes of Galloway, whose descendants include many mayors of Galloway. The tribes of Galloway were 14 merchant families who dominated the political, commercial, and social life of the city of Galloway in Western Ireland between the 13th and 19th century. Dominic Lynch II. He was a wealthy merchant and importer of Chateau Margaux and Lynch's Lucca oil. He was also a great supporter of the arts, and he financed the first Italian opera company, the Garcia Troupe, ever to perform in New York City. He brought in the Garcia Italian Opera Company to perform a benefit concert for the orphan asylum in 1826. It is one of the earliest opera performances in the United States. He was regularly called the most fashionable man in New York by his contemporaries.
Colonel James R. Mullaney and family. He was a veteran of the War of 1812 and held the office of Quartermaster General in the United States Army from 1816 to 1818. Dr. Robert W. Hogan. He was founding member of the Irish Emigrant Society and longtime member and three-term president of the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick in New York. Peter Harmony, wealthy merchant of Spanish ancestry and owner of cotton mills, including Harmony Mills in New York, whose buildings still stand to this day. He also owned the Harmony House meeting place in New York City. Peter was naturalized in America in 1805 when he adopted the last name Harmony. He inherited his brother's fortunes upon their deaths and founded the trading house Peter Harmony and Company, which operated out of 63 Broadway, currently the location of the American Express building in Manhattan. He traded with his brother Francisco, also a successful merchant who ran a trading house in Cadiz and had extensive business relations with Spain and Cuba. In 1836, he founded the Harmony Manufacturing Company and opened cotton mills. The mills were powered by the water stream from the recently built Erie Canal. The mills failed to make a profit and were subsequently sold to two New York businessmen, Thomas Gardner and Alfred Wilde, in 1850. After its sale, in 1872, Harmony Mills became the largest cotton mill complex in the world. Peter Harmony was also the owner of Brig Mallock, a boat which was detained and seized by the United States after its captain was found to be engaging in piracy. Harmony sued the U.S. government to reclaim the ship's cargo, which had been confiscated. He eventually lost the case after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against him. Harmony was also a known slave trader, which was protested by the British consul to New York by James Buchanan in 1841. In 1846, he was thought to be worth around $1.5 million, making him what was part of a then small group of millionaires of early 19th century New Yorkers.
Neva Hecker Sadlier was a Catholic author and member of the Sadlier Publishing Company, which is still in business today. James Hart. He was a veteran of the War of 1812. He served for 50 years as sexton of St. Patrick's Churchyard Cemetery, the 11th Street Cemetery, and Calvary Cemetery. He was an Irish immigrant and close personal friend of Archbishop John Hughes, originally buried in the Churchyard Cemetery and later moved to a crypt in the Catacombs where his son is also buried. And last but not least, John Connolly, who was the second Bishop of New York.
Before we end this documentary, another note of interest about Old St. Patrick's, being located in New York City, it does have some celebrity connections. Old St. Patrick's is the childhood parish of famed movie director Martin Scorsese, and he even served as an altar boy there. Scorsese has even been involved with fundraising efforts to restore the cathedral's organ. He was interviewed at the cathedral by Anthony Smith, a University of Dayton religion and film scholar. Smith presented Scorsese with the American Catholic Historical Association's 2025 Distinguished Service Award at the cathedral. Regarding Scorsese's involvement with the church's organ restoration, he is the honorary chair of the Friends of the Urban Organ, a non-profit organization that raised funds to restore the cathedral's organ. The organ was in very poor condition, and the restoration project was part of a larger effort to renovate the organ, which included removing soot and plaster, repairing cracked leather, disassembling the organ, and transporting it to Pennsylvania for restoration.
Comedian Jim Gaffigan is also a member of Old St. Patrick's Parish. The Gaffigans belong to the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in Lower Manhattan, where they were married in 2003 and their children have been baptized. His book, Dad is Fat, includes pictures of the family at Old St. Patrick's and references to the family's attendance at Sunday Mass. The pastor, Donald Sicano, is credited in the book's acknowledgments. There is also an original Thomas Edison light bulb still operational in the catacombs. The Thomas Edison light fixtures can be seen in Eckert's family vault. Also inside the Eckert family vault are examples of title work by noted engineer and builder Raphael Guastavino, who also provided tile work to the other New York landmarks such as the City Hall Station, Cathedral of St. John the Divine, and Ellis Island. And that will conclude our tour of St. Patrick's Cathedral and Catacombs located in New York City. If you ever happen to be in the area, I highly suggest checking it out. Between the interesting history, the beautiful church, and the catacombs below, I'm sure you will enjoy the tour. Thank you for watching and hope everyone enjoyed it. Until the next one.